Welcome, Slayer the Alchemist, and welcome to another edition of Dudes Talking Metal. This is where we get the finest dudes out there, the most knowledgeable dudes of metal, to get together with you to talk all things heavy metal and hard rock. We got our regular resident dude in the house, Tony, and we have a special guest dude today. We've got Mike from the YouTube channel For the Sake of Heaviness. Mike has been here not too long ago. We had you and Butch on here
Yep.
talking about your channel, and what was our topic? What did we talk about? And when you guys were on.
Oh my God, I can't believe I
I'm
can't
drawing a
remember
blank
what
on it. We talked about something related to heavy metal. I can tell
we
you
we
that.
did. What did we talk about? Oh my God, it's terrible. We talked about metal. That's what we did.
Yeah, we talked about metal. It's all metal in the end, anyways. Yeah, so make sure you check out Mike's channel and Butch. He co-hosts this show with Butch, who's our regular
Oh yeah.
resident dude. But Butch is off. I think he's in Washington, D.C., petitioning for the Angel catalog to be remastered with extra bonus discs or something like that. I'm not sure where he is, but he can't be here today. So we have his partner
Good
from
job.
For the Sake of Heaviness. Here, Mike is with us. All right, so what we're going to be talking about, we're kind of two things here in this episode. We're going to be talking about this unseen, just released Van Halen footage. It's like lost Van Halen footage from like 77, 78, 79. I think there's like an 81 in there. And this is just taken Van Halen fans. I mean, I'm a Van Halen fan. I'm not somebody who's in the weeds, like hip to like every nuance of Van Halen lore and stuff like that. But apparently, there were rumors that these tapes existed. They came out, everybody's mind was blown. They came out in pretty quick succession. And these things are, these just aren't little 5 minute, 8 millimeter clips of the band. These are like 2.5 hour long videos with backstage stuff, with live stuff. It's obvious that it was somebody connected to the band because there's all this backstage footage. There's clips like of them on the side of the stage recording the band as they perform. And it basically just came out of nowhere. And this person put all this stuff up on the internet, hours and hours of this. Unfortunately, as the last time I checked a day or two ago, it's been taken down. Uh, I'm sure it will resurface in some form or another, but we thought it would be fun to kind of talk about this Van Halen footage a little bit. I personally didn't get to watch all of it because literally there was probably like 6, 8 hours of Van Halen footage just dropped on YouTube. So I kind of skipped around and jumped to what looked like the cool backstage stuff and jumped to the live stuff to see what that was about. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to have another go round, and we're going to give one piece of lost video footage that we would love to have surface, kind of inspired by this Van Halen footage. What's a piece of video footage, concert footage that maybe we know might exist, maybe we don't even think it truly does exist, but we would like it to exist. So we're going to go around and we're going to share that after we talk Van Halen. So Mike, tell us about your thoughts on this Van Halen footage that just sort of seemingly came out of nowhere.
I'm sure that, just like you, I get pretty giddy when I see stuff like that pop up because, I think this kind of relates and parallels to a lot of the Kiss fans too. I think if you're a diehard Van Halen fan, that's just like, all the Kiss fans are. So when that footage pops up, you're just drawn to it immediately and you have to hunt down every single second of footage you can find. Yeah, the Van Halen stuff was crazy, and I like you, John. I was drawn to like that backstage kind of footage. That's my favorite stuff to watch because it just brings everything into a bigger spectrum of reality. Puts the humanity into it of okay, here they are getting ready and doing this and goofing around. So I've always just loved all of that stuff. The live footage is great too, and for me anyway, I think that was like the best era of the band. I mean, I was a big Van Halen fan up to '84. I did like some of the Sammy stuff, but and I'm not going to try to say I'm a Van Halen purist or anything like that. But seeing this footage, in the so-called glory days when they were still, I don't want to say relatively unknown, but it was before the mega stardom, crept in. So yeah, I cruised through about as much as that as I could. There was hours and hours of it. I didn't get to watch all of it either, but what I did watch, it was pretty special. It was pretty cool being able to go back to that time period and live it like it was just going on. Really, really good stuff. It's just unfortunate though that like a lot of the Kiss footage that comes out of nowhere, it gets taken down or it disappears almost as fast as it was put up. But that said, I think that's proven to all of us, even if you're just a casual Van Halen fan, there's got to be a ton of footage in the vaults. If that stuff just came out of nowhere and at the volume that it did,
Yeah.
then you know that we're in store for some really cool stuff coming up. And I really hope that more of that surfaces.
And what makes his stuff special, I think, is because of the era that it was recorded in, the late 70s,
Absolutely.
early 80s. You didn't have, I mean, obviously you didn't have cell phones. So people were dealing with like 8 millimeter, which from what I understand, I have no experience with that, but from what I understand, you can't go in and just record
No.
for like
Yeah.
3 hours straight. You're changing
Right.
reels and stuff like that. And it does have this sort of, what's the Bigfoot footage called?
Oh,
The Zapruder
Zapruder?
film? Is
Or
that
no,
what it's called? Or is that
that's
Kennedy
Kennedy. That's
assassination? Whatever the Bigfoot footage is, the
yeah.
one in the woods where he's walking right. It's all
Yeah,
grainy and stuff.
the only footage. Yeah,
Right.
Right, right. It's like it has that kind of like, archival,
Yes.
ancient sort of quality to it. That's what I love about the 8 millimeters. If it cuts in odd places, sometimes when it fades, it comes into another section, it's a little distorted, or there's some weird thing, or it's grainy, like the footage of them on stage is really grainy, like that Bigfoot footage, so it gives it this sort of like kind of a mystique to it or something,
Very
yeah.
much.
mystery to it that I think is just super cool. But so
It
Tony, what do
almost
you,
gives you that feeling where you're like, I'm not really supposed to be
yeah,
seeing this right
exactly.
now, but
Like
I
this
get
is
to.
really like special that I'm even
Yes.
even seeing this. But so Tony, what are your thoughts on it when you saw it?
I was blown away, but I'm a big collector of like bootleg recordings. I have been for years. I mean, I've got like all these like Van Halen bootleg compilations and stuff. And when something comes out you've never seen, you're just like, wow. And it's the same with Kiss and any band that I'm in, really into. To see footage that you've never seen, you're gonna be like just delighted to see it. It didn't matter how bad of quality it is or whatever.
Yeah.
The good thing about this is it's all really good quality. I'm not sure, but from what I've heard, someone got this footage, and it may be footage that came from the late Noel Monk, who was their manager.
I've heard that, yeah.
And maybe they were trying to assemble a Van Halen documentary that just got like abandoned, and
Um,
this person or somebody involved just took it and put it all on YouTube. But you mentioned something before we started taping about you thought it might be taken down now, and I looked as we were going on. I just looked, and it's not up. So it's been taken down. It'll probably get put back up. Who knows? Um, but yeah, it's hours and hours footage. I mean, I watch so much of it, and sometimes you don't have any sound. Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
silent footage.
yeah.
But the backstage stuff is really hilarious. I mean, there's a lot of stuff from the early, like from the first tour when they're touring with Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing where they were doing this. Hi, I'm Michael Anthony.
Yeah,
Everybody kept
yeah.
saying, "Hi, I'm Michael Anthony." They even got Ozzy to do it and
Yeah.
Bill Ward, and Ozzy's just being hilarious and hamming it up from the camera. And and then there's the Largo show, which is this show Largo '82, which I have here. It's the day before or the day after. It's not the same one. That this one circulated for years from the Diver Down tour. And but yeah, it's so much cool stuff. There was video outtakes. There's this whole like 2 hours of just behind the scene footage of them filming Panama,
Yeah. Yeah.
and where they were all flying on
Yeah, I
the
saw
on the
that.
on the ropes and stuff. The coolest part about that, one of my favorite parts from that video was filmed live in front of a live audience.
Oh,
There's
wow.
this dude, you guys remember, this dude stands up in the audience during the reach down between my
Yeah.
leg part of what they show the audience. This dude, he's wearing a Raven t-shirt, and he stands up and he's got a flannel and he does this. I remember being on MTV years ago. Weird Al Yankovic said, "I want to put an end to a rumor. This is not me," because the guy kind of looked like Weird Al. But you see this dude like constantly, like different angles and stuff. He's there the whole time and he's rocking out. It's like it's the Raven guy. And but that's so cool to see that, because we've only seen what we've seen, so we never
Yeah.
saw what went around it. And then it's 1984, the Castle Donington footage, which that actually came out. That got leaked out a year or so ago. And that's the footage from Monsters of Rock, where they were playing with Ozzy and Motley Crue and stuff. So there's backstage footage of them all hanging out. And you can hear Ozzy playing in the background. Ozzy's on stage and they're all,
Yeah.
can you hear it playing? And they're all, and David Lee Ross got a PA system set up and he's like entertaining his guests and stuff backstage. But if I'm not mistaken, that may have been the last show that band played together at that period,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's really neat to see that some of that footage I know got filmed and it was shown on the Old Grey Whistle Test with them doing Hot for Teacher from that show.
That's right.
But this is different footage because it's a different angle and so forth on it. But God, man, yeah, it's so much cool stuff to see on there, man. And it's just, I was just blown away with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I was the same way. I always see, in this day and age with the internet, you kind of think you know everything when it comes to like these bigger bands as far as like okay, footage that might be out there, unreleased recordings and stuff like that. This is the type of stuff that people talk about ad nauseum
Yeah.
on forums. And I guess from the little bit of research that I did, that people had some idea that, like you said, maybe this manager had this footage, but nobody was really sure what it was exactly and everything. So for the volume of this stuff to just drop, and there's been floating around now for a while was a Fresno. There's a guy that he must have worked at a club or something because he has a ton of videos from Fresno, California, and he had an early 77 like show. It was like about
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes long. Uh, but just for this stuff to just come out of nowhere, it's amazing. And, for everybody out there, I know I've talked about this before on the channel. I know Darren and I have talked about this on Sabbath Sunday that, people's reaction is, well, why don't they just put this stuff out? And for a little while, there was this company, boy, their name of the company is on the tip of my tongue. They always put a watermark on their live clips. And for a little while, they had up a pro shot from the Technical Ecstasy tour. It was about a
Mm-hmm.
30, 40 minute clip, whatever the name of this company is. And what they do is, so the difficulty that what happened was is the people that own this company commented on the Black Sabbath video and they said, look, we're going to come on this. We get more emails about this Black Sabbath video than any other video we have. We've had people offer us all kinds of money. People have tried to get fans together to raise money for this. And he said, here's the problem. He goes, the problem is that we own the video footage. That's all we own. We do not own the music
Right.
on this. So it's sort of a catch-22 where the band owns the music, but somebody else owns the footage. If you're interested in this type of thing, look up the podcast Zepp Fans. And there's a guy on there talking about who owned the original Royal Albert Hall footage. And he talks about the same thing. He owned the footage, couldn't do anything with it because Led Zeppelin owned the
Right.
music. Led Zeppelin found out he owned it because the BBC bought some clips of it, but didn't use the music. The BBC bought the rights to use a couple songs and they used his clips. And Led Zeppelin went, whoa, wait a minute. Where's that clip from? We've never, we didn't know that existed. And so it's sort of this thing where it's just not as easy as, well, why don't you just release it? Well, who knows who owns this footage now? Who knows? Like in the Zepp Fans episode, this guy talks about how he had bought this Royal Albert Hall footage it had been passed down to like two or three different people. It had gone through a couple people before he got it. And luckily, he had all kinds of paperwork on it showing that he owned it at that time. But when it comes to stuff like this, I mean, I don't know. Is their former manager still alive? This guy could have sold it to somebody else, who sold it to somebody else, who had it stolen from his house, and it turns into this big, messy thing. So sometimes it isn't as easy as just, well, why don't they just release it? Well, because there's this legal entanglement of who actually owns the footage. Obviously, Van Halen owns the music, but who actually owns the footage? So that's what makes these things kind of messy. But
For sure.
Okay. Before we move on, I forgot to mention I do not have my regular microphone. This thing you're seeing here in the corner here is his microphone that I borrowed from my son here. It's got this little red light on it and everything, but you can't stop rock and roll, so I had to keep moving along here till I fix my microphone situation. All right, as promised, we are going to go around and we're going to share with you lost footage that we would like to see found from whoever for a specific date, a specific tour, a specific era of a band. Mike, kick us off. What's the lost footage that you want to see show up on YouTube tomorrow morning?
All right. Well, I'm gonna cheat here a little bit, and I'm gonna mention one band in particular, and then like an era of somebody else. It'll figure itself out. Um, I'm a huge Kiss fan, as I know that you guys both are. So I'm always up for any lost footage of Kiss, specifically up to and including 76. The funny thing is years ago on Kiss Online, when I was way more active on there, I live in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and we have an ice arena here that served as like an arena of sorts for bigger bands that came through. And in March of 75, Kiss, Rush, and Thin Lizzy played here. Now, the legend is that Thin Lizzy never made it because it was a massive blizzard and they got lost coming off I-94 and never made the show. However, Kiss and Rush both played. I've got lots and lots of pictures from that show. But just through talking to guys on Kiss Online, I came across this guy and he saw my handle on there. He's like, "Hey, I'm from Wisconsin." I was like, "No kidding." I was like, "I'm in Kenosha." He's like, "I'm in Kenosha." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And of course, the conversation turned to, "Were you at the Kiss show at the Ice Arena in 75?" He said, "Not only was I there, but he goes, I've got the entire set on 8 millimeter." And I'm like, "Dude." And I about crap my pants. And I begged this guy for months. I said, "Dude, I will pay triple whatever it takes for you to get that transferred to a DVD." And he
Yeah.
just would not do it, would not do it, would not do it. And then I finally got him to consider it. And he's like, "Look," he goes, "I only pull this thing out once a year because through the years, the
Yeah.
film gets brittle." He goes, "So the next time I pull it out," he goes, "I'll let you know." Months go by, and I kind of poked and prodded. He's like, "I'm gonna do it this weekend." He writes me back a couple days later. He's like, "Hey," he goes, "I lost the first 10 minutes of the film because it all broke and cracked and fell apart." So he says, "I'm keeping the rest of it intact. I am not going to transfer any of it. I'm going to wait till technology can figure out a way to make this all work." And
Wow.
then I lost contact with this guy over the years. So I have never seen this footage pop up, but I'm always on the lookout for that in particular.
Wow.
So that would be like a holy grail for me, just because of, it was my
Yeah.
hometown. I was way too young to actually attend that
Yeah,
show,
I
but
understand.
I grew up with plenty of people that were at that one. But lost footage I would love to see is kind of going from 84, 85, 86, from when Merciful Fate was falling apart into the Fatal Portrait era of King
Mm.
Diamond. There's something just really magical, mystical about that particular era for me. That's when I first discovered Merciful Fate on the tail end of it. I never got to see the original Fate live that had kind of dissolved by the time I was finally involved in it. Loved it. Don't Break the Oath is my absolute favorite. There's just that mystique about that album. So any footage I can find from that era, I just eat up. And there was a show in Italy from that era that was
Hmm.
really, really good footage. And I'm not so sure that one's even up anymore. But I did finally get to see him on the Fatal Portrait tour. So that holds a special place for me. And there's a little bit of footage here and there. There's a decent camera shot show from Detroit. And then another funny thing is they actually played in Kenosha too. It was the first tour with Megadeth. And they were in Chicago the night before they were coming to play my hometown. And our local record store, we were friends with those guys. And Ronnie Vallejo was one of the owners. He's like, "Hey," he goes, "my buddy's got a VHS tape from the King Diamond Chicago show last night." He goes, "You want to buy it?" And we were like, "Oh, yeah, of course, man." But we're teenagers, kind of short on cash and everything. So he's like, "Here, you can take it home and watch it first and see if you like it." So we took it home, and it was a real shaky camera. The
Yeah.
sound was kind of, we were kids. We were expecting better than that. So we were like, "Nah, I think we'll pass on it." Of course, we're just kicking ourselves in the ass years later for
Yeah.
Yeah.
not taking that. And that's some other footage I've never seen pop up anyplace.
Wow.
So, but like on that tour, there's a Detroit show that is out there. So for me personally, there's just a magical something about that era from, the demise of Merciful Fate into the Fatal Portrait era of King Diamond. So any and all footage of that, I would welcome big time. I would love to see that stuff. So that's
Nice.
that's for me.
Nice. Nice. How about you, Tony?
Nice. Um, excuse me, getting over a little bit of cold. Um, the footage, a couple things off the top of my head. There's some supposedly some footage of the last Thin Lizzy show that they
Mm.
did that recorded for the Live Life album. Um, I'd love to see that, especially when you've got all the guitar players. I don't think Snowy White was there, but you had Gary Moore and Sykes and Robbo and Scott. Everybody was there on stage. I think maybe even having a brain fart. Original guitar player. Um, anyhow, he was supposedly there as well. And uh, that would be really cool because I seems like I remember seeing a before I was even aware and even a Thin Lizzy fan. I knew who they knew the name because I was getting into metal and I'd see the name in the magazines. It seemed like I remember seeing an MTV news clip once about Thin Lizzy playing their final gig and they had like some footage, like live footage from it. But it could have been footage from another video or something. But it's like that had to have been filmed though. I'm just surprised nothing it hadn't come up. Eric Bell was the name I was trying to think a
Eric
while ago,
Bell.
but he had
Yeah.
everybody was on stage together. So that would be really neat to see. And also the heavy metal Holocaust concert that went on with that Ozzy played with Randy and they had Motorhead and Riot and Triumph and that would be neat to see because there is some footage of Randy Rhoads like tuning up at that,
Yeah.
and you see Ozzy talking to Lemmy backstage and stuff. You got to wonder, was it filmed and somebody's just got it in a can somewhere, because that would be really, really cool to see for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be
Great picks.
awesome.
All right. Well, I'm going to follow up on that. This was easy. I know there's a lot of people that would love this. And you mentioned Randy Rhoads, a footage of Randy with Ozzy. There is little bits and pieces. There's, I think, some Chicago
Yeah.
footage, but it's pretty far away. It's 8 millimeters, so it's really grainy. There's another one too. I forget where it's from. There's one where he actually holds Randy up, which turned out to be the cover of the tribute album. The actual,
Mm-hmm.
picture was taken
Yeah.
at that show. You mentioned that brief sound check footage, but man, a proper somebody with a camera, middle of the stadium or whatever, getting just a good shot of that. That would be an absolute holy grail for me. On the Randy Rhoads forums, and I think it's pretty well accepted that this exists because I've seen people do some still shots of this. That there's two brothers from, I forget where they're from, somewhere in the States, two twin brothers that supposedly went to an Ozzy show with Randy, and one of them stood on Randy's side and one of them stood in front of Ozzy, and they both filmed the entire show.
Mm.
And apparently these guys are just sitting on it, and they I don't know, they either want $1 million for it or they just don't want to sell it. I think they've done what Mike you described, where they've shown it to a couple people, and some people have snapped some like still frame shots of it. And again, this is like the Bigfoot footage. Everybody sits there and
Yeah.
micro analyzes
Yeah.
like they took still shots of it, and people are like micro analyzing this to try to see if it's real or not. And it's kind of unfortunate because there's a fair amount of footage with Randy with Quiet Riot. There's like a couple full shows of Randy
Yeah.
with Quiet Riot. Part of that is because there was this guy that was friends with the band, Ron Sobel, I believe is his name, who's put out a really cool book. He was a photographer, and he had a video camera, and so he just took a lot of footage of the band. So there's like, probably a couple hours of Randy with Quiet Riot. But when it comes to Randy with Ozzy, there's very little of it. The little that's out there, there's that after hours footage, which was at a TV station. It's about 30 minutes long. There's a couple of Entertainment Tonight did a thing on the band, and there's a little like a minute and a half. But unfortunately, the camera is on Rudy's side of the stage, so you can't really see Randy. So that's definitely number one for me. Number two would be Scorpions, Uli Roth era stuff. I'd love to see a
Yeah.
full show from that era. Getting ready for this episode, I did a little, especially the Tokyo tapes. Like if there was
Hmm.
pro shot footage of Tokyo
Yeah.
tapes. I was doing a little research before our episode, and I read an interview with Uli where he says he's got a vault filled with 8 millimeter Scorpion stuff from his time in the band, and he says only a little bit of it has ever been seen. So he's sitting on a bunch of stuff. I'll throw another real quick one out there. I'm sure you guys would agree with this. Judas Priest Unleashed in
Yeah.
the East. If there was pro shot footage of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that was leaked, that
Hmm.
would certainly
I would
be.
love to see an
Yeah.
upgrade of, I think it was Tokyo Stained Class Tour, where Rob's wearing like that
Yeah,
sash looking
yeah,
pirate thing.
Kimono. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to see a nice clean upgrade of that
Yeah.
because that's a great show.
It
yeah,
really is. Um, when you were mentioning the after hours footage from Randy, I remember first getting that. I was one of the first, like when I started like getting like bootlegs and stuff. That was one of the first ones that I got. I remember like when I would order stuff out of the back of a magazine before I
mhm,
ended up getting
Yeah.
into the tape trading thing with friends, and getting that. And people were coming to my house because you got, Dio's got some Randy Rhodes footage. You got to go over there and watch it. And I just remember like my friends that were so into Randy Rhodes are like, he's moving, because you just
yeah,
the only thing you'd seen is the Crazy Train video where it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
very little pieces. One other clip, John. I'm kind of surprised you didn't mention. It's got to be found someday. The footage of Sabbath on the
Live Evil.
show with Dave. What was his name? The guy Dave that did took Ozzy's place and they did Junior's Eyes on the TV
Oh
show.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Dave
yeah.
Walker.
Yeah, that's on YouTube though, I think, or at least it
It,
was for a little bit.
Supposedly the footage has disappeared, was
Okay.
taped over or
I could
something,
have
but the
sworn I
audio the
saw
audio's
that
been out.
somewhere. I could have
Yeah,
sworn I saw that. So maybe I'm just thinking of the audio that I've seen. I thought you were going
and
to
if
say
it
the
is,
live evil footage because there is
oh
some
yeah,
there is some, it's not 8 millimeter, but whatever it is. There's
pro shot, yeah,
unedited
it's
pro
pro
shot
shot,
live evil
yeah.
footage. And some people have painstakingly taken the time to dub in from the live evil album, what they think is going on there because they intended to make a live video. So they recorded
Hmm.
this and it just never got used. There's only I think you only see like maybe 20 minutes of it or something like that.
Yeah.
It's out
The
there, but
Heaven and Hell, the song Heaven and Hell synced up perfect. So it was
yeah.
definitely the same show, because I think it was Seattle and a couple other places they
Yeah.
filmed that and recorded that. Yeah, that's another one for sure. That's really something that surprisingly has not surfaced yet.
Yeah, probably some of this stuff is like you guys, one of you mentioned, that just stuff probably gets damaged, it gets lost,
Yeah.
it gets transferred to somebody this person has it, gives it to somebody else. And but I'm glad you mentioned like about the bootleg stuff because I remember going to record shows and that was really something special. If you could get a
Oh yeah.
VHS tape with live footage, and you mentioned that after hours thing, I remember getting that it was actually at a record store and they had it and I got it. And I think at that point it was even before, could it have been before the tribute video that they put out with some of that? Because I don't remember. That was the first time, like you said, ever seeing Randy actually moving.
Mhm.
Is I'd only ever seen pictures of him. So there was something really special back then about I remember finding the getting the Don Kirshner rock concert stuff with Sabbath, just seeing that stuff because, this is way before MTV and YouTube and all that stuff and or the early days of MTV, but way before YouTube and everything. So it was really special. And Mike, you mentioned like, sort of the shaky cameras. And
Yeah.
sometimes these things were recorded, dubbed so many times that, I
Fifth
remember having
generation
some, yeah,
VHS.
some pentagram videos I remember having of like the Victor Griffin,
Yeah.
original Victor Griffin era pentagram. And the stuff was just so dark because it had probably been, it was, first of all, it was probably recorded in a dark room.
Sure.
And then it got copied and copied like, 80 times by the
Yeah.
time it got to my hands. But yeah,
Yeah, man.
nowadays everything, pretty much everything that bands have, they've put out in one form or another if they
Yeah.
can. And YouTube has all the rest of the stuff. So now it's just kind of like, it doesn't have the same excitement. But this Van Halen footage was definitely something because of the volume of it. If the
Oh
guy
yeah.
had just posted like 5 minutes of live clips or something, I mean, people would have talked about it. But this was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
when I first saw these, I was thinking, oh, gee, I remember I read the number on the screen wrong. My mind just didn't want to believe it. I thought, oh, this is only like 2 minutes and 12 seconds of video. I was like, no, wait a minute, that's 2 hours and 12 minutes of video. I was like, what in the
Yeah.
world? Where did this come from?
Oh, Holy Grail.
All right,
But
I,
it
well,
I
was
wanted
so
I
it
wanted
was
to touch on
interesting
one
enough to
thing.
keep you engaged.
yeah,
It's just
Yeah.
even if even if it didn't have sound, you're still just like, wow, what's going to happen next?
true.
I want and to kind of touch on something you mentioned too, Tony. If somebody had just, countless hours of time at their disposal, there's so much like newsreel footage of concerts that from back in the 70s and early 80s where news stations were given access and I think full ownership of like the say the first three songs of concerts
Yeah,
because they would talk
Hmm.
about who's in town tonight or for reviews. I know there's one of the cooler looking reels is I think it was Kiss in like Montreal during the
Oh
Creatures
yeah,
where they're
yeah.
kind of down in the pit and then they move up and
Hmm.
it's across the stage. I've heard that there's like half of that concert was filmed by the news station. But I mean that's all over the place. How many countless hours of footage is there, rotting away in newsroom vaults?
yeah,
If somebody had time, I that's other stuff I'd love to see too. So
yeah, definitely. All right, well, there you go. There's our discussion on the Van Halen footage. Let us know what you guys thought of the Van Halen footage if you saw it, and let us know some lost footage, some unknown video that you would like to see from a band that does not exist. Let us know in the comments down below. I'd like to thank Mike for joining us here on Dudes Talking Metal. Make sure you check out For the Sake of Heaviness, the YouTube channel. Go over there, like and subscribe to that, and we'll see you at the next Dudes Talking Metal.